As we bolted from the cabin, the sound of heavy footsteps pursued us, echoing our own racing hearts. The gaunt man in tattered clothes emerged from the shadows, his wild eyes locked onto us, pushing us to run faster than ever before. My friends and I had planned a hiking trip to a remote forest known for its unexplored trails. We were thrilled at the prospect of spending a weekend disconnected from the hustle and bustle of the city, surrounded by nature's beauty. The anticipation of adventure filled our minds as we set off early on a crisp Saturday morning. The first day was filled with laughter and exploration as we navigated the main trails. By the second day, our curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to venture onto a lesser-used path, hoping to uncover hidden gems within the forest. Little did we know, our innocent quest for discovery would lead us to a terrifying encounter we would never forget. As we trekked deeper into the forest, the path became narrower and less defined. The thrill of exploring an untouched part of nature kept our spirits high. After a few hours, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, partially hidden by overgrown vines and trees. The cabin looked like it had been there for decades, forgotten by time. Our curiosity piqued. We approached the cabin cautiously. The broken windows and weathered wood gave it an eerie appearance, but the sense of adventure pushed us forward. We debated whether to enter, but the possibility of uncovering something interesting inside was too tempting to resist. The initial unease as we stood at the cabin's doorstep was palpable. The silence of the forest around us felt heavy, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Despite the growing sense of dread, we pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The interior of the cabin was even more unsettling than the exterior. Dust and cobwebs covered the old furniture, and the smell of mold filled the air. The dim light filtering through the broken windows cast eerie shadows on the walls. As we explored, we noticed claw marks gouged deeply into the wooden walls, as if someone had desperately tried to escape. The realization that we might not be the first visitors to this cabin, and that those before us may have met a grim fate, sent chills down our spines. We found more signs of struggle: broken furniture, scattered belongings, and eerie symbols etched into the wood. The oppressive silence was occasionally broken by the creaking of the old structure, making us jump at every sound. The growing sense of dread was overwhelming. We decided it was best to leave, but just as we turned to go, we heard heavy footsteps outside the cabin. The sound grew louder, closer, each step resonating with our mounting fear. Peering through the cracked window, we saw him. A strange man standing just outside, watching us intently. His clothes were dirty and tattered, his face gaunt and eyes wild. He didn't move, just stared at us with an unsettling intensity. Panic gripped us as we realized we were not alone, and the man's presence was far from friendly. The man's menacing appearance made it clear we were in danger. We whispered frantic plans, trying to figure out how to escape without drawing his attention. The oppressive silence was broken only by our hushed voices and the relentless pounding of our hearts. Just as we were about to make our move, the man began to advance towards the cabin. His steps were deliberate, slow but purposeful. The sense of imminent threat pushed us into action. We had to get out, and fast. With our adrenaline surging, we bolted out of the cabin, our feet pounding the forest floor as we ran. The man pursued us, his heavy footsteps echoing through the trees. The forest, which had felt like a haven of tranquility just hours before, now seemed like a labyrinth designed to trap us. We pushed ourselves to run faster, fueled by pure fear. Branches whipped against our faces, and the underbrush grabbed at our legs. But we didn't dare slow down. The sound of the man's pursuit grew fainter, but we didn't stop until we were sure he was no longer behind us. When we finally paused to catch our breath, the reality of what had just happened hit us. We had escaped, but the fear lingered. The man had disappeared into the forest, leaving us with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of dread. Back at our campsite, the mood was somber. The joy of our adventure had been replaced by fear and uncertainty. We packed up quickly, our desire to stay in the forest completely vanished. As we made our way back to civilization, we vowed never to return to that forest. The memory of the abandoned cabin and the strange man haunted us long after we left. The experience left a deep impact, changing the way we viewed our adventurous spirit. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, now held a dark and sinister memory. I often reflect on that weekend, the claw marks, the eerie symbols, and the man who chased us. The unanswered questions gnaw at me. Who was he, and what did he want? The fear of the unknown lingers, a constant reminder to trust my instincts and be cautious of the unexplored. The terror of that night, the haunting presence of the man, and the abandoned cabin will stay with me forever. The memory of those days still sends chills down my spine, a dark chapter in my life that I will never forget. Feeling scared yet? Hold on tight, the next horror awaits. Hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. Story 2. In the dead of night, I watched in horror as ghostly soldiers clashed in the clearing, their screams and gunfire echoing through the forest. The dawn couldn't come soon enough. My friends and I had always been fascinated by history and the tales of ancient battles. So, when we decided to go on a camping expedition in a forest known for its history of ancient skirmishes, our excitement was palpable. We had heard rumors about the place, but were eager to explore a little-known area and uncover its secrets. The forest was vast and dense, filled with towering trees and thick underbrush. We set off early in the morning, our spirits high and our curiosity leading the way. Little did we know, our adventurous spirit would lead us to an encounter we would never forget. As we trekked deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost oppressive. The sunlight barely penetrated the thick canopy, casting an eerie gloom over everything. After several hours, we stumbled upon something that made our hearts race with a mix of excitement and unease. Scattered on the forest floor were old artifacts, helmets, rusty bayonets, and other remnants of a bygone era. The sight was both fascinating and chilling. The artifacts were covered in dirt and moss, as if they had been there for centuries. We picked them up, examining each piece with awe and a growing sense of dread. The air around us felt different, heavier, as if the forest was holding its breath. Despite the unease, we decided to set up camp near a clearing, thinking it would be an ideal spot to rest and continue our exploration the next day. As we settled in, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to intensify, making us all a bit jittery. As dusk fell, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and trying to shake off the strange feeling that had settled over us. The fire crackled and popped, providing a semblance of comfort in the darkening forest. We tried to laugh and enjoy ourselves, but the heavy atmosphere was hard to ignore. In the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by the sound of gunfire. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the noises continued. Screams, the clash of swords, and the unmistakable sound of battle. My heart pounded as I crawled out of my tent, flashlight in hand, and stepped into the cool night air. What I saw in the clearing took my breath away. Misty figures, barely more than shadows, were locked in combat. They moved with a frantic energy, their ghostly forms illuminated by the moonlight. It was as if we had been transported back in time to witness a battle from centuries ago. My initial shock quickly turned to terror as I realized what I was seeing. These were not actors or reenactors. These were the spirits of soldiers long dead, reliving their final moments. The air was filled with the sounds of battle, the screams of the wounded, the clash of metal, and the thunderous roar of gunfire. I rushed back to the tent and woke my friends. They stumbled out, bleary-eyed and confused, but their expressions quickly changed to one of horror as they saw the spectral battle unfolding before us. We stood there, paralyzed with fear, unable to tear our eyes away from the ghastly scene. The ghostly soldiers seemed oblivious to our presence, focused solely on their eternal struggle. The ground shook with the force of their combat, and the air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. We could feel the weight of history pressing down on us, a palpable reminder of the violence that had taken place on this very ground. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, the ghostly figures began to fade. Their movements slowed, and their forms grew more transparent until they vanished completely. The sounds of battle ceased, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. We stood there, stunned and disbelieving, trying to process what we had just witnessed. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly with the disappearance of the ghosts, but the fear remained. We quickly decided to pack up and leave, our movements hurried and frantic. The forest, which had seemed so inviting during the day, now felt like a place of horror and despair. Our journey back to town was tense and silent. Each of us was lost in our thoughts, grappling with the reality of what we had seen. The forest seemed to watch us as we left, its ancient secrets still hidden within its depths. Upon returning to town, we shared our experience with the locals, hoping for some explanation. They listened with knowing expressions and told us that many people had witnessed the same spectral battle over the years. It was a reenactment of a clash that had taken place centuries ago, the spirits of the soldiers doomed to relive it for eternity. The revelation was both comforting and terrifying. We were not the first to witness the ghostly battle, and we would not be the last. The forest held its secrets close, and the spirits of the past continued to haunt it. We vowed never to return to that place, marked by a deep-seated fear and respect for the haunted site. The experience left a lasting impact on each of us. The memory of the ghostly soldiers and the sounds of battle haunted our dreams, a constant reminder of the night we spent in the forgotten battlefield. We had sought adventure and discovery, but what we found was far beyond anything we could have imagined. The fear lingered, a shadow in the back of our minds. We became more cautious, more aware of the hidden dangers in seemingly peaceful places. The experience taught us to respect the past and the spirits that still roam the earth, bound by the memories of their final moments. The terror of that night, the haunting presence of the battlefield, and the ghostly figures will stay with us forever. Don't go anywhere. The nightmare continues with our next story. Make sure to subscribe and comment on your favorite part so far. Story 3. The flashlight beam revealed a monstrous figure with glowing eyes and scaly skin. It let out a scream that echoed through the forest, freezing us in terror. My brother and I had always been adventurous, so when our parents suggested a camping trip in a dense, isolated forest, we were thrilled. We spent the first day exploring the area around our campsite, marveling at the untouched beauty of nature. As night fell, we decided to take our exploration a step further. With flashlights in hand and a sense of adventure in our hearts, we set off down a narrow trail that led deeper into the forest. Little did we know, our night of excitement would turn into a night of horror. The night was pitch black, and the beam of our flashlights barely penetrated the thick darkness of the forest. As we ventured further, the sense of thrill was replaced by an unsettling feeling. The forest, which had seemed so inviting during the day, now felt menacing and alive with unseen eyes. Every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig set our nerves on edge. It felt like the forest was closing in on us, each step heavier with the sense of being watched. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped us, broken only by the occasional sound of branches breaking under the weight of something large moving nearby. Our pace quickened, and we exchanged nervous glances. The feeling of being followed was almost palpable, and our fear grew with each passing moment. The dense trees and thick underbrush seemed to hide countless eyes, observing our every move. The darkness became a suffocating presence, making it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest, and we both froze. The sound was followed by heavy, deliberate footsteps. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we realized we were not alone. The forest, once a place of beauty and adventure, had turned into a realm of terror. With trembling hands, I aimed my flashlight in the direction of the noise. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating a figure that defied explanation. It was tall, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the night. Its skin was covered in scales, glistening in the flashlight's beam. The creature stood motionless for a few seconds, its eyes locked onto ours. There was an almost intelligent malice in its gaze, a predatory awareness that sent chills down our spines. The sight of it was horrifying, like something out of a nightmare brought to life. Then, without warning, it let out a deafening scream. The sound was otherworldly, a mixture of rage and pain that echoed through the forest, freezing us in place. The scream reverberated through my body, shaking me to my core and leaving me momentarily paralyzed with fear. The creature turned and darted into the darkness, its movements swift and unnatural. The brief encounter left us in a state of shock, unable to process what we had just witnessed. Our fear turned into pure panic as we realized the danger we were in. We turned and ran, our only thought being to get back to the safety of our campsite. The forest blurred around us as we sprinted through the trees, the sound of our heavy breathing and pounding footsteps filling the air. The darkness seemed to close in even tighter, as if trying to trap us. Back at the campsite, we collapsed onto the ground, our bodies trembling with fear and exhaustion. The relative safety of the camp provided little comfort, as the memory of the creature's glowing eyes and terrifying scream haunted us. We stayed close to the campfire, its flickering light offering a small sense of security. We couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made us jump, our imaginations conjuring images of the creature lurking just beyond the light's reach. The forest seemed alive with unseen dangers, and our fear kept us on high alert. We spent the night in a state of heightened anxiety, unable to sleep. The oppressive darkness and the constant fear of the creature's return made it impossible to relax. We whispered to each other, trying to make sense of what we had seen, but our words only fueled our fear. As the hours dragged on, the fear and tension became almost unbearable. We clung to each other for reassurance, our eyes constantly scanning the dark forest around us. Every minute felt like an eternity, the night stretching on with no end in sight. When the first light of dawn finally appeared, it brought with it a sense of relief. The forest, bathed in the soft glow of morning, seemed less threatening, but the fear remained, a lingering reminder of the terror we had experienced. We knew we couldn't stay any longer. It was time to leave. In the safety of daylight, we told our parents about the creature we had seen. At first, they were skeptical, attributing our fear to overactive imaginations. But we insisted, the terror in our voices making it clear that what we experienced was real. Determined to find some proof, we led our parents back to the spot where we had encountered the creature. The forest, now less menacing in the daylight, still carried an air of unease. When we reached the spot, our fears were validated. Huge footprints and broken branches marked the area. The sight of the evidence changed our parents' demeanor. They realized that something had indeed been there, something large and terrifying. The discovery of the footprints and broken branches was undeniable proof that our experience was not a figment of our imagination. Our parents decided it was best to cut the trip short. We packed up our campsite quickly, the sense of urgency palpable. As we left the forest, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to lift slightly, but the fear remained. The memory of the creature and the night's events weighed heavily on us. The drive back to town was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. The encounter had left a deep impact, and we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The forest, once a place of adventure and beauty, had turned into a place of nightmares and fear. Reflecting on the experience, the fear and terror of that night still haunt me. The memory of the creature's glowing eyes and deafening scream is etched into my mind, a constant reminder of the unknown dangers that lurk in the dark. The experience changed us, making us more cautious and aware of the unseen threats in the world. We vowed never to return to that forest, the fear too great to overcome. The forest holds its secrets well, and we had stumbled upon one that was better left undisturbed. The lingering fear and respect for the unknown have stayed with us, shaping our future adventures and decisions. The terror of that night, the haunting presence of the creature, and the oppressive atmosphere of the forest will stay with us forever. The experience left a mark on us, a constant reminder to trust our instincts and be cautious of the unknown. To this day, the memory of the creature and the fear it instilled remain vivid. The forest, with its dense trees and dark secrets, is a place we will never forget. The encounter taught us to respect the power and mystery of nature and to always be prepared for the unexpected. The experience was a stark reminder of how fragile our sense of safety can be and how quickly it can be shattered by the unknown. The creature in the forest, with its glowing eyes and terrifying scream, will haunt our memories forever.